Hey guys, Alan here. Solid Rock Sunday School class straight from the Kennedy compound. Hey, a couple of fast things preliminary here wise. Cookie has done very well this week. I'm sure that you've seen on Facebook. Her sister Carol has been posting. She's had some ups and some downs, but overall she's made some really good progress this week. She has a long road to recovery. This isn't just a few days or a few weeks. It is more like a few months. So keep her in our prayers. Also, it looks really promising that we may end up being able to be back in our services soon. So that'll be great here if we can just get our governor to kind of quit playing his games. Let's make sure we're safe out there. This is real, and we do need to be safe. I'm not by any means trying to make any fun of the situation because I deal with this daily, and it is disastrous. It is looking better, though, I will say, out here in Bakersfield right now. Okay, let's just do a real quick review. We've been talking about core strengths that we need in our lives to be able to be strong, influential Christians. How do we take and be somebody of influence? Well, the way we become a person of influence is through Bible study. We've talked about that. Our prayer life. In the last few weeks, we've been talking about faith. We've talked about the faith of Noah. We've talked about the faith of Abraham. We've talked about the faith of Sarah. The last 2 weeks, we've been talking about the faith of Abel. This week, we're going to actually talk about the faith of Moses, and not just Moses, but Moses' parents also at the same time, because this is going to be something we're going to find is extremely important. Now, remember that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, things we can't tangibly lay our hands on, but we believe it, and then we act on our belief. So, I do have a question in regards to today's lesson. Is it more important what we leave to our children or what we leave in our children? See, this faith that Moses had, we're going to find it's instilled to him by his parents, by his mother. And it was done during very turbulent times. By faith, Moses is what we're going to be talking about here. In Hebrews, the 11th chapter, verses 23 through 29, we're going to pick up there in just a moment. Then we're going to be jumping over to Joshua, the 4th chapter, 1 through 9 after that. So it is more important, I think, and not just think, it is more important what we leave in our children, much more than what we leave to our children. But I think many times we take and we think of this backwards. We think if we give it to our children, the monetary piece, that we're leaving it in our children, and it's two totally different things. Hebrews 11 chapter, verse 23. By faith, Moses. Notice it starts out by faith, Moses, when he was born. Now, Moses didn't have faith when he was born, okay? His parents had faith. By faith, Moses, when he was born, he was hid 3 months of his parents because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandment. Notice verse 24, and it says, by faith, Moses, when he was come to years. Notice, Moses came to years. Moses came to a point where he had personal faith. Refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Verse 25, choosing rather to suffer the affliction of the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater than the treasures of Egypt, for he had respect unto the recompense of the reward. Verse 27, by faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. Through faith, he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of the blood, lest that he be destroyed, the firstborns should touch him. By faith, they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land. which the Egyptians are saying to do or drown. So faith is a gift of God, and it can be, it can't be something that can be acquired from somebody else. It's something that we have to get through. We're saved by grace through faith with absolutely nothing else. But faith is a gift that has to be nurtured. It has to be cultivated. It can be increased, or we can deny the fact and just not have faith. But remember, faith is required even for salvation. Amram and Jochebed, they had a son. His name was Moses. They received this special son from God. I think this kind of is important because we talked about a very controversial subject last week, which was abortion. Notice that in this turbulent time, they were supposed to automatically have this son killed. Automatically, the son was supposed to die, but they hid this child, knowing he was special. He actually entered the world with this death sentence already prescribed by the king. You know, with a prayer and a kiss, his parents finally take and just can't hide him any longer. And they put him in this basket that they've specially made. They put him in the Nile River. And his sister takes and follows him down the river to see what happens with him here. And Amram takes and he sets him afloat in this lovely crafted ark down the Nile River, and the waves take and probably rock him to sleep, and it carries him away, his sister watching close by. And, you know, God takes and he holds the water of the worlds in his hands. And we see that right here he does. He takes and he has a special purpose here. And it was the faith of Moses' parents here, the hand of God. So Moses is rescued, of course, as we know the story, by Pharaoh's daughter, who brought Moses to the palace. Notice something. Pharaoh is going to have to pay the bill to raise the very one who God has chosen to take and rescue God's people from his hand. By divine order, God takes and allows Jochebed to be called the nurse of this child, to take care of him until he's probably 8 or 10 years old. You know, we kind of think of this as being maybe a year or two, but I mean, we're talking most likely Jochebed was his nurse here for till he was probably 8 to 10 years old. So faith has provided life here for Moses during these adolescent times he's had. During his young years, his mom, I know she took and taught him about the Hebrew God. She instilled this knowledge into Moses. She trained up a child the way the child should be raised. Proverbs, the 22nd chapter, verse 6, train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they will not depart from it. But can you imagine being raised in the palace? This is a very elite way of living. But this faith that was instilled to him by his mother, a Hebrew slave, never went away. I'm sure during, these formulative years here with Moses, that without a doubt he was taught by his mother, and I'm sure he was carried often for a tour off to the place where all the Hebrew slaves were. He witnessed the idolatry of the Egyptians. He saw this God of the Hebrews that was instilled in him by his mother. seeing both the faith of the people that were enslaved and then seeing these gods that you could take and pick up and handle and in your hands that the Egyptians took and lived by. Moses' faith, Moses here, he's faced with this tremendous decision he's going to have to make. And it says, by faith, when he was come to years, Moses has many encounters with God over the next few years. At the age of 40, he's going to span 80 years to really have this faith sink in. But at age 40, he tried to take things in his own hand. He tried to do things in his own power. He tried to do things in his timing and not in God's timing. And what happens? He ends up killing one of the Egyptian men here, and he has to flee for his life. He flees off into the desert. We see that he goes off to the desert for 40 years. Interesting is that this is the very desert he's going to take and lead the children of Israel in later on. But then we see Moses here, he comes to faith. His encounter with God, his mother's teaching, this burning bush, all of a sudden, it sparks this faith that he has in his life. It is a life-changing time here for him at this burning bush. We go on to see the plagues that God sends to the Egyptian people. We see this pillar of fire that takes and it leads the children of Israel. We see the dividing later of the Red Sea. We see the water that was made sweet, that was bitter. We see quail, we see manna. We see the water that comes from the rock when they're desperate for water. And then we see a great victory over another country with the Amalek people. But it was not until this burning bush experience that Moses seems to take and start developing his own faith. But then we see later this face-to-face when he's with God on Mount Sinai. That is probably the biggest life-changing piece here. Aaron and even the people, when he took and returned from the mountaintop, he acted here on faith. The faith of Moses now becomes this vehicle that we see that's going to take and drive the children of Israel and lead them through the wilderness to the promised land. Faith cannot be handed down. It can't be willed. It can't be traded. It can't be purchased. I think maybe it can be borrowed, I guess you could say. Or maybe a better word for it, it can be instilled by people around us, by our parents, the way we was raised. But faith, it can never be handed down. When, while others take and show no interest in this young man here, we see that Moses' own wife and sons leave and seem to want no part with this experience while he goes up to Mount Sinai. And while others take and show no interest, a young man takes and finds some interest here. And his name's Joshua. He follows Moses up to Sinai. Didn't say he went with Moses all the way to Sinai, the top. He was with God by himself. But Joshua, he feels this mountain tremble. He sees the fire. He smells the smoke. He begins to receive some of this faith from Moses here. The act of faith of Amram and Jochebed, Moses' parents, they've affected another life already here. Joshua takes up the work where Moses leaves off and is faithful into his death. The faith of Joshua seems at times to be double that sometimes of Moses. If you remember, Moses dies, Joshua takes them over the Jordan River on dry land again. God took and parted that river so they could take and go across on dry ground. But there was some instructions that God gave them. God gave some very special instructions here. And these instructions seem to follow on way beyond just a few years. Let's look at Joshua, this memorial that Joshua is going to set up here. The 12 stones here. In Joshua, the 4th chapter, verse 1, and it came to pass when all the people were clean, passed over Jordan, that the Lord spake unto Joshua, saying, Take ye 12 men out of the people, out of every tribe a man, and command ye them, saying, Take ye hence out of the midst of the Jordan, out of the place where the priest's foot stood firm, 12 stones, and ye shall carry them over with you, and leave them in the lodging place where ye shall lodge this night. And Joshua called the 12 men whom he had prepared for the children of Israel out of every tribe a man. And Joshua said unto them, Pass over before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of Jordan. Take up every man of you a stone upon his shoulder, according unto the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign unto you, that when your children ask your fathers in a time to come, saying, What mean ye these stones? I want you to notice something here. He's setting up a memorial, something that later on children will ask about, something later on that the grandparents and the parents and the great-grandparents have stories about, and set up this memorial. Verse 8, And the children of Israel did so as Joshua commanded, and took up 12 stones out of the midst of the Jordan, as the Lord spake unto Joshua, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, and carried them over with them into a place where they lodged and laid down there. And Joshua set up 12 stones in the midst of Jordan, in a place where the feet of the priests which bear the ark of the covenant stood, and they are there unto this day. So according to historians, this memorial that's set up here, it's the same general place here that we see that where Christ is baptized some 1482 years later. Possibly, think about these stones. Could the pile of stones here be left, that was left by Joshua, they could have possibly even been the pulpit that John the Baptist took and preached from. The nearby city of Jericho, remember Jericho is the very first city they're going to conquer when they go across the Jordan River. And this is where later we see Zacchaeus and we see Bartimaeus. And they had these life-changing experiences with Christ. It just lay just adjacent to the river here. Many say that, when you talk to historians and all, it's kind of interesting, or when you read historians here is what I mean. Many say that, the women, they use these rocks, in the area here for washing and for bathing. And I can kind of almost imagine, remember, it's this memorial that's set up here that maybe, some little boy takes and says, Mom, what's these stones? What are they all about? You know, how far does faith of a father and a mother go? How far does it go? How far is it passed down? We do know that if we don't pass it down, that it will die. The faith you may see in your own children, it needs to travel on, but they can reject it. It may be rejected, but we need to teach it to them. We just need to never take and stop acting by faith in our life. Never stop acting on faith. Remember, it's more important what we leave in our children than what we leave to our children. Next week, I'm going to concentrate a little bit more on Moses. I'm going to wrap up this faith section. And I kind of intended to do this week, but it just didn't have time constraints where I could do it. But I want to look at his life. I want to look at the way he followed God. I want to talk about God's provision to him. I want to talk about some of the mistakes he made, because he made some mistakes. But I want to talk a lot about his daily walk with God, the walk we need. Each and every one of us need this daily walk. So this is Alan signing off from the Kennedy compound. You guys have a safe week. Looking forward to seeing you very soon. Love you. Take and drop notes to me. I always enjoy those when I see them coming from people. And we will catch you next week. So this is Alan signing out from the Kennedy compound.